What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it will lead to real truth. Don't look back to yesterday.
Now there are answers.
Tomorrow's on the
Welcome to
way.
LivePrayer.
It's waiting there for
And welcome to Live Prayer. I'm Bill Keller. Thanks for being with me on this Wednesday night. Good to be back with you, wherever you are across this great land of ours or in other great lands around the world. This is Live Prayer, coming to you live and in living color every Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time to midnight. So good to be back together with you. Man, I have got a lot of stuff to go over with you tonight. You know, it's funny. The program had a pretty, I'd kind of actually got things together a little earlier than normal today, had everything mapped out pretty good, but, well, you know what they say about the best laid plans of mice and men, right? And all of a sudden, we just got another barrage of things I really need to talk to you about, so kind of shifted some things around, but we do have a lot to get to tonight. It's going to be one of those nights. So buckle in, hang on, and we'll see how much, if not all of this, we can get through tonight. But it's good to have you with me. And of course, this program comes to you as part of the ministries of LivePrayer.com, world's largest interactive Christian website. Reach a little over 2.5 million folks every day via the internet. There's our web address, LivePrayer.com. Please check it out. Everything is free, nothing to buy, nothing to sell you. No trips for you to go on. Just 20 years of very unique front lines ministry content. Thousands of hours of videos, lots of audios, and of course, the main ministry tool of Live Prayer is the daily devotional I've written every morning since we started 20 years ago. Every one of those 7,000 some devotionals is in a database, searchable by topic, keyword, or date. So you can go to our website and find all of that incredible content and just enjoy yourself, okay? And by the way, as we broadcast live from 11 to midnight every Monday through Friday on liveprayer.com, we also simulcast the program on our Roku channel. Welcome to our friends from Roku. On our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages. So welcome to you folks as all. And as you may know, our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages also contain the archives of all of our previous programs since we relaunched digitally back last Thanksgiving. It seems like it was just yesterday, but we're almost coming up on a year. My goodness, unbelievable. Anyway, let's have a quick word of prayer and get into things because, like I said, I've got a lot to go over with you tonight. Lord, thank you for tonight. I thank you for this time together. We try not to ever take it for granted. It is a special time for us to just stop our busy lives for a few minutes and come together to hear from you, talk about the things going on in this world around us and how it fits into our roles as your servants, as your followers, as your ambassadors. And Lord, I just pray tonight that you will be with our friends that are part of the program tonight, whatever their needs may be. Lord, tonight I lift them to you and ask you that you meet those needs. We thank you for all the many blessings. And Lord, I just pray now that you'll help us to set aside the hustle and bustle of the day, clear our minds and hearts to hear from you tonight, and use this time for your glory, and we will thank you for it. In the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, amen and amen. Praise God. All right. I've got a bunch of abortion-related stuff tonight that really none of it is going to take a lot of time, but it's a whole, plethora in that category. So I think tonight I'm going to start out there and just knock off all of those various issues real quick and then kind of settle into a lot of the other content I want to talk to you about tonight. Let's just start with the fact that, as we've been discussing a lot as of late, the censorship by social media companies like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Google, as we've discussed, it's been primarily a censorship of conservative political speech, but because many things that we deal with on a spiritual level transcend into the political, these censorship nets, drag nets, if you want to call it that, are picking up a lot of pro-Christian content. And from a little bit of insight that we're getting, I know James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, he does these undercover stings. He's recently been working on the social media industry, and his reporting, along with some various lawsuits, we're starting to get a little bit of a peek inside of the operations of the social media giants. And again, they're very focused on basically just shutting down speech they don't agree with. And all these social media companies, as we've discussed, lean very heavily to the left politically. So that is why their real target, and what really started this whole process, was the very wise and productive use of social media by the Trump campaign in 2016. So it was soon after that the social media companies, and I really don't think it was a collaborative effort, because it didn't have to be. I think each on their own decided that they were going to ensure that they were not going to allow their platforms to be used to promote a conservative, pro-Trump political ideology. And while they can't shut it down altogether, they can sure make a huge dent in the amount of content that their platforms carry and produce. So that's been there. Now, we've been talking about it, again, not only from the fact that a lot of issues like life and sexual perversion and same-sex marriage and a bunch of other issues cross into the spiritual realm, which is, again, catching a lot of pro-Christian content. We are now starting to see that while they have a very definitive game plan of censoring as much conservative political content, they're also very focused on just run-of-the-mill pro-Christian content. From one batch of emails that were uncovered out of one of the social media companies, it was a plan to basically target books of the Bible and flag that content as hate speech, just to give you an example. We've also seen in recent days, again, from whistleblowers within some of the social media companies, that were pretty much ferreted out and let go because apparently they're not many in their numbers. So apparently finding these whistleblowers hasn't been too difficult. But based on what insiders have been debriefing people on, again, it's a very concerted, focused, certainly not an accident, effort to censor as much conservative political speech and Christian speech. And just a quick caveat, it's been very interesting that they've all admitted that they are very wary of any censorship of anything to do with Islam. And in the words of one gentleman, because Islam likes to come blow things up. And they speak of the Charlie Hebdo massacre. Of course, Charlie Hebdo is the political satire magazine in Paris, and they made a mocking cartoon of Muhammad. Of course, by Islamic law, you're not allowed to basically draw any type of representation of Muhammad. That's blasphemy, punishable by death. And some Islamic adherents broke into the offices one day. It's probably been about 4 or 5 years ago now, and massacred 7 or 8 of the people that worked at Charlie Hebdo for simply printing a cartoon of Muhammad. So they're afraid of Islam, and I guess they have a right to be. But they've got a real war on the whole pro-life movement. And again, this issue for the first time, I did some research a couple days ago because, again, LivePrayer has been online for 20 years. The TV program has been on for 15 years. I've always dealt with the abortion issue because it's an issue that needed to be addressed, both in the daily devotionals, numerous times every year since we've been online, numerous times every year on the TV program. But the majority of those conversations about the whole life issue, it was really generated, because it's an issue that Christians need to be passionate about and need to stand up for. It wasn't so much driven by the news stream. The things I write about in the daily devotional every morning and have for 20 years, the things I talk about on this TV program every night for the last 15 years, much of it is driven by the daily news stream as far as putting what's going on in our world, in our country, in our world, in the context of our faith. There are times, obviously, that I will deal with issues that really aren't in the news stream, but issues that we need to talk about. And abortion, the life issue, has been one of those topics. Because really, other than the annual March for Life around the Roe v. Wade anniversary in January, there's maybe 1 or 2 times it might pop up in the news. It's usually something Planned Parenthood driven. But it's an issue that the news doesn't want to talk about. Politicians don't really want to talk about, even the ones who consider themselves pro-life. Well, it's front and center now, and it's not going anywhere. And there is a war right now on this issue, just so you know. And I've tried to explain this to you over the last few weeks, since it's been part of our news stream every day, and it is a daily. It is in the stream daily now. And of course, a lot of this has been driven, just to be blunt with you, by President Trump, by his vocal, bold comments on life and support of life. He has spoken out more clearly than any president has ever spoken out, which is fairly ironic since it wasn't that many years ago. He was really had no hard feelings about the issue one way or another, and considered himself pro-choice, as most people that grow up in the New York City area and live in that type of environment pretty much are, because it's a very liberal environment. And but his major moves in this area, and then of course what ramped it up even more was the appointment of not just Gorsuch, but obviously Kavanaugh giving the court a 5-4 lean, if that's to be believed. I still have my doubts, but we'll see how it works out. Technically, it's a 5-4 conservative court, but that doesn't always mean anything. We will see. But it became a real fear of the pro-baby killing movement, especially those in that business like Planned Parenthood, that the Supreme Court might overturn Roe versus Wade. And then it really hit the news stream as you had states like New York and Virginia pushing just extreme abortion laws that literally allowed doctors to botch an abortion, the baby is delivered, and still have the legal right to murder that baby. Extreme abortion laws that literally you had the New York State legislature cheering as they passed these infanticide laws. And it was even to the point they lit up the Empire State Building in pink to celebrate their new infanticide laws. But at the same time, and what's really driven it home now, are a lot of states like Alabama, Missouri, and others who have really been working hard on laws to, number one, restrict abortion, cut down as many as possible, and in some very bold cases like Alabama, just shut it down altogether, with the understanding that it's going to immediately be deemed unconstitutional, but then the appellate process starts with the goal of getting a abortion case before the Supremes to force them, in all honesty, to try to force their hand to rule on Roe v. Wade, whether they are going to allow it to stand. So that's why it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And it has literally ripped the mask off of people because it's no longer a topic they can just be silent on. Now, to be fair, the vast majority of the news stream is on the side of those who want to continue killing babies. You're still not hearing, other than a few voices, a lot of people for life really wanting to get into this fight. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Politics play into it. Donations from Planned Parenthood play into it. And just for the record, they donate to Republicans too, just so you know. So it's out there. It's going to be out there, I said, all the way till the 2020 election. It will. But socials are using their influence in the marketplace to try to push as much pro-infanticide positions as possible while censoring as much pro-life content as they can. So that's going on. Again, this is the first time this issue really has ever been waged on a continual basis to the extent it is right now, and it will continue to be. But the socials are clearly weighing in on the side of the baby killing industry and doing their part in trying to restrict as much pro-life content as they can. Ariana Grande, she's a pop singer of the day. She, like a lot of these people in the entertainment business, don't really have a clue what's going on. Probably couldn't articulate a real understanding of what they supposedly believe in. She held a concert recently and basically donated her portion of that concert, I guess $250,000, to Planned Parenthood. So you got that going. And again, the vast majority of these people in Hollywood, the Alyssa Milanos, these very vocal people pushing the abortion agenda, push comes to shove, if they had to sit there and articulate an actual credible position, they couldn't do it. It just happens to be the current cause celeb, as they say. Now, Planned Parenthood and the ACLU just sued the Trump administration over conscience protection. The Trump administration, again, I mean, you got to give these people credit for one thing. You know, and again, you have to understand this in the context of the world that Donald Trump's lived in his whole life. That's a world where, you know, yeah, you go out, you run your mouth, you're boastful, all the bravado and all that. But at the end of the day, you got to produce. Because at the end of the day, production is where the money comes from. You know, again, in the business world, you know, you always hear people say, well, he's transactional. Of course he's transactional. That's been his world. You know, that's how the real world works. It's only in the world of politics where you can sit there and make promises year after year, never fulfill them, and go back to the same people and make the same promises and never fulfill them and go back to the same. I mean, politics is probably one of the only professions, and I think that's a legitimate term to use. It's probably one of the only professions. This is a good program, by the way, tonight. You need to make sure people you know watch this, okay? I'm just giving you a little insight, okay? But politics is one of the few professions where you don't have to accomplish anything and you can be very successful. Very successful at producing nothing. It's probably one of the only jobs, again, I think that's a correct application. It's one of the only jobs where you literally can produce nothing and keep your job. And not just keep your job, but continue to prosper in your job and move up. And one of the things that President Trump promised was to be a fighter for religious liberties, because the past 8 years under Obama, they did everything they could to tighten down and discriminate primarily against Christians, just for the record. It was a very pro-Muslim advocacy administration, and it was advocacy of Islam to the detriment of Christianity. And when I say detriment, I mean in the sense that they did everything they could, really, to restrict Christian liberties. They took the opposite side of Christians on pretty much every issue that came before them in 8 years. And one of President Trump's promises on the campaign trail prior to being elected was he was going to fight for Christian liberties. And he has. One of the things he's done to honor that pledge was a conscience protection executive order, which again basically stated that you don't have to do something if it's in violation of your beliefs. You remember under Obamacare, when Obama literally had the gall to sue the Little Sisters of the Poor because they refused to offer contraception? It was against their religious beliefs. Obama didn't care. He sued an order of nuns. Unbelievable. But President Trump has, on several occasions now, done the things he had within his power to do in terms of giving Christians the ability just to live their life and live their faith and not have to pay for living their faith. And this Conscience Protection Act was one of those. It was one of those orders that he has put in place again, that basically states that you don't have to do something that violates your faith. Well, the Planned Parenthood and ACO are suing the Trump administration over that Protection Act to force doctors, listen to this, to force doctors that have a faith standard when it comes to life, that's their personal faith, and they refuse to perform abortions. It is against their faith beliefs. They don't believe in murder, which is what abortion is. At the end of the day, when you break it down and you cut through all the nonsense, that's what abortion is. It's murder. And you've got doctors that believe in life and aren't going to be part of murder. Well, the ACLU and Planned Parenthood are suing the Trump administration over this Protection Act, this Conscience Protection Act, to basically force doctors to perform abortions, that they can't not perform an abortion on the basis that it's against their faith beliefs. That's what we're, like I said, you got to understand me. This is a war that is going around. We are fighting this war at a level that hasn't been seen literally since Roe v. Wade. And Roe v. Wade just kind of snuck up on people, to be blunt with you. It wasn't like there was this huge national debate. Had there been Roe v. Wade in 1973, are you kidding me? Had there been a real national debate, they never would have, Roe v. Wade never would have passed through. Never. Snuck in, it wasn't even really, it was, and that's why a lot of people really feel that there's a real legal basis to knock it down. And don't forget, even if the Supreme Court said Roe v. Wade is overturned, all that means is then it becomes the prerogative of each state. It becomes a states' rights issue, and each state gets to determine where that state is going to come down on the issue of life. Okay? That's why these state these governorships and these state legislature, that's why they're important. All right. Pro-life people are being advised. Let me use that word, okay? Got some other words I'd like to use, but let me just use advise. Don't use harsh language. In other words, self-censor. Don't call it murder. Don't call it infanticide. Don't talk about slaughtering babies. That's too harsh. That immediately upsets people. Speak about it in softer verbiage that doesn't immediately outrage people. You've got to be kidding me. And anybody that's been reading LivePrayer for any length of time, even a week, maybe even a couple days, to be honest with you, anybody that's watched this program more than once, you have got to be kidding me. You want me to basically self-censor how I talk about what is literally the slaughter of innocent babies. What else do you want me to call it? Put the baby to sleep, let the baby go see Jesus. I mean, what kind of softened verbiage do you want? I think I told you, it was in New Zealand. And they put up a billboard on one of the main highways going into whatever their main city is. And it just had 3 words on it. Abortion is murder. Those 3 words. That's it. No pictures, no outrageous pictures. Can't have any pictures. Nothing. Just abortion is murder. And the abortion rate was took a 30% hit, within 30 days. I mean, I'm sorry. The problem we've got And the problem the pro-life movement has at times, it is too concerned about how we talk about this issue. It is trying to, kind of get our point across without being so crude and crass, right? It's not a perfect analogy, but it's the same problem I have with people that believe in biblical creationism, as the Bible teaches, okay? But creationism, gives off some bad vibes. So they came up with these weasel words, intelligent design. Now listen, I understand what intelligent is, and it's true, it is intelligent design. That's a very applicable, true way to speak about it. But the whole reason they came up with the weasel language, intelligent design, is because creationism, scared people. Well, it means God. I mean, come on. If you believe it, just speak it. Do you think Satan and his minions are out there self-censoring themselves, speaking about things in softer tones so it's not quite so harsh? Are you kidding me? They go for the jugular every second of every day when they're out there pushing their satanically inspired agenda, whatever that agenda is. Don't use such harsh language. Give me a break. Let me tell you something. If you've never seen it, it's 30 seconds you need to see on my website under one of those tabs on the top menu bar. I can't remember where it is now. You'll find it. It's not that hard to find. I've got a whole page on abortion, and on that page is I think about 28-second video of abortion being performed. If you've never seen it, go look at it. And then you tell me how you softly describe what that really is. I mean, it is the most violent. I told you on Unplanned, the pro-life movie that was just out. Whole movie, not one cuss word, not one even glimpse of any kind of nudity, okay? Yet, the movie rating board gave it an R rating because I think it was a total of 28 or 32 seconds. 32 seconds, I think it was. In the whole movie, hour and a half, whatever total running time was, 90 minutes, whatever. Out of the whole movie, there's 28 seconds of what they described as extreme violence, and that 28 seconds is why it got an R rating. Well, that 28 or 30 seconds, whatever it was, that was not even an actual abortion being performed. It was in an abortion room. It was the abortion being performed without actually even seeing it happen. It was just the scene of the whole thing, and it is. I got to give them credit for one thing. They were right. It is extreme violence. The way that act happens, there's no other way to describe it. Bill Maher, by the way, very interesting. He's an interesting guy, actually. Very anti-religious, just very, irreverent isn't even a word, whatever. He's got a little bit of a problem with abortion, and I'll tell you why. His mother was told to abort him, and she decided not to. How about that? Now, he's a big liberal, and he's a God. He's a God denier. That's probably the best way to, label him, a God denier. He's kind of like George Carlin, the invisible sky daddy and all that type of irreverent reference to God. But it's a hardcore liberal on everything, including supports abortion. He says he's a little uneasy about the abortion thing. Yeah, because his mom was told to abort him, and she decided not to. it's going back to the verbiage of talking about this. Pro-death people that support the killing of babies, it is drummed into them. Call it a fetus. Don't ever call it a baby. Don't ever call a woman a mother. Matter of fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, dear Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, ripped Justice Thomas a while back for referring to the woman who had an abortion as a mother, and she went berserk. She's not a mother. Because if you identify her as a mother, then you've got to accept the fact that if she's a mother, that means she's got a child. And you can't label the child as a child, or it makes you look like a monster, which is what you are if you support abortion, a monster. But they are because I'll tell you what's happening. Again, this debate is in the public ether now to a level that it really has never been, probably ever, at this intensity for this amount of time, and it's not going away. So you've got a lot of people in the pro infanticide world that they're trying to teach their adherents what to say and what not to say. You know, don't ever call her a mother. She's a woman. Don't ever talk about that baby as a baby. You know, call it a fetus if you got to call it anything. Clump of tissue is even better. Don't ever call it a baby. I told you a while back. I've been trying to not, spoon feed you this, but because again, there's probably no topic or no issue that is more disturbing and just disgusting to talk about than this issue because of what it is. It's horrible. People don't like talking about it. It makes people very uneasy. But I'll tell you one thing that has happened though. We've been in we always get a lot, but we've been getting an above normal number of women and men who are coming to us. Again, the anonymity of the internet, that's one thing that has helped LivePrayer do the work we do every day, in the sense that it, because of the anonymity, people talk to us about things they've never told another human being. And we've always had women and men coming to us, with years. I've had women in their 80s just guilt-ridden their whole life, and then they had their abortion long before Roe v. Wade. But we're seeing an uptick in the number of people that are coming to us, trying to work through that whole issue from their past. And in a lot of cases, it's something they've never talked about with anybody. And again, a lot of it's because it's out there now in a way like it really never has been before. Just one more real quick on this. Rachel Maddow was on in an interview, and she said these new pro-life regulations that these states are adopting is like a horror movie. She said the regulations that are doing what they can to slow down the number of babies being slaughtered, she said the regulations are like a horror movie. I mean, this is how sin blinds people to the point they're stupid. She's not stupid. I mean, she's a Rhodes Scholar, whatever you may think of that. I mean, there is an intelligence level required to have that on your resume. But this is what sin does. It blinds people. It makes people stupid. And she sat there and actually said that these pro-life regulations are like a horror movie. All right, let me hit a few things real quick. Mayor Petey, of course, he's all over the 3-year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting. Of course, that was the Orlando nightclub that was primarily geared to the LGBTQ community. I can't remember now how many people died, a bunch of people. But the amazing thing is, it's being remembered in that community of people who choose to engage in perverted sex with people of the same sex. It's being remembered in that community. But the one thing that nobody's talking about, and all that I've seen on this topic in the last couple of days, as we're hitting that 3-year anniversary, is who did it. This, if you remember, this was an act of Islamic terror, point blank. It was a known fact from virtually the moment it happened, because if you remember some of the events, you had the Muslim guy that was killing these people literally in there shooting people, talking to 911. Remember that? Again, the media, it just amazes me how they have no respect, pure disdain for Christians. Yeah, they want to take a woman's right to choose from her. Total disdain for Christians. Yet they coddle, handle Muslims with a kid glove. Don't want to offend the Muslims. Maine, state of Maine, became our 8th state now. I told you this was going to roll quickly now. 8th state now, doctor-assisted suicide. Boy, I got some emails I need to pull out. I think it was probably 15 years ago I started writing about this, because you were first starting to see the first glimpses of this coming around in Europe 15 years ago. Remember, one of the things I've always told you about why I talk about Europe, not only because it's a global community in the year 2019, but in terms of the spiritual dearth, we're at one point, I felt fairly confident, 30 to 40 years behind Europe. I think I've adjusted that a lot lately to maybe 10 years now. But I remember 15 years ago when it was first starting to, be something the Europeans were accepting. I started talking about it then. 8th state now, and what, now it's going to be, again, and this is another byproduct when you're slaughtering 4,000 innocent babies every single day, every 24 hours, in just the time between this program ended last night and the time we're going to end in about another 15 minutes, approximately 4,000 babies were slaughtered. Think about that. Just think about that. And that's day after day after day after day. So once we lose any kind of a value of life at that end of the life spectrum, it's only natural. Well, getting kind of up there, grandma's not really like she used to be, and she's probably not able to get around much, and kind of burdened these days. I'm just, and then once they get comfortable with that, then it just goes through the whole range of ages. It looks like this is going to be very interesting to see. I'm going to give you something to watch. Will the Dems go to remove the Hyde Amendment? Now, that was what got Biden in all kinds of problems, because, again, the Hyde Amendment came out right after Roe versus Wade, and it basically was an amendment that's been attached to every spending bill for the last 40 some years that basically states that U.S. tax dollars cannot be used to fund abortions. And again, it's an absolute joke because we give $500 million every year to Planned Parenthood, taxpayer money, $500 million. And of course they swear, well, it doesn't go to abortion, it goes to this guy. Give me a break. But technically, now, Biden got in trouble, of course, because he's, as a Catholic, he says he's pro-life, even though he's always supported abortion. But he's always been in favor of the Hyde Amendment. And of course, all of the Democrats running for president, you know, they want abortion on demand right up to the moment of birth. And again, if you didn't get it done while the baby was in the birth canal, yeah, once it gets out, you can finish the job. They're down for the most extreme abortion measures there are. They make Kermit Gosnell, they owe him an apology. That butcher. And they've all been on record. Well, I'm going to repeal the Hyde Amendment. Again, this is one of these things that politicians say that they never followed through with. Just part of their lying. But the Hyde Amendment, it's going to be very interesting now as the next spending bill comes up, if any Democrats move to have the Hyde Amendment removed. I don't think they will. That's my personal opinion. We'll see. We'll see. Hong Kong, China, you probably see a lot of stuff about Hong Kong. Real quickly, what that is, 20 years ago, the lease of Hong Kong to Great Britain ended, and it reverted back to Chinese control. Now, they've pretty much had a puppet government running Hong Kong for the last 20 years. Supposedly, it's an autonomous government, but they all answer to Beijing, okay? Now, what's happening is, now that Xi is basically a dictator, lifetime rule, he's clamping down on everything. That's when the real persecution of Christians began, the persecution of the Muslims, this 24/7 surveillance of 1.4 billion people. It's quite a feat, actually. And what they're trying to do now is anybody that's convicted of a crime in Hong Kong, they're supposed to be tried and dealt with in Hong Kong. But China wants them to be extradited to China, to mainland China. And that's what this big war that you're seeing going on is about. Because Hong Kong, the people of Hong Kong are afraid that, you know, once China starts taking like a very, everybody knows that the rulers of Hong Kong are nothing but agents of the Chinese government in Beijing. But they've played this game that they are autonomous. China owns it, but they've got their own ruling government, whatever. Okay, so that's kind of the game they play. The people of Hong Kong are deathly afraid that if they give in on this extradition thing, pretty soon they just aren't even going to try to play any games at all. And it's going to be mainland China running Hong Kong, which who knows what that's going to mean. Because Hong Kong's a fairly, it's a very metropolitan, worldly place. A lot of commerce. That's one reason mainland China's kind of left it alone, because, it's a big cash cow for China. But Xi is more interested in power and control. And in his mind, they're still gonna make the money out of Hong Kong, but he wants total, literal control of every Chinese person. And technically, the people of Hong Kong are Chinese. And technically, they are governed, or Hong Kong's owned by China, so technically, they are Chinese. So that's what's happening there. We will see. My guess is there's going to be a real showdown because Xi is at a place now. He is bent on consolidating total power, total control of everything China, and it should be a little bit fearful for the world because there's a lot of power, a lot of economy, a lot of military might. I mean, look what they did, out in the China Sea with those islands. They built these islands out there in open waters, technically, and built military bases on them, and just basically said, "We own these islands; they're ours. This is part of China now." I mean, it'd be like going 20 miles out in the Pacific and building a bunch of islands out there and putting air bases and everything. And even though it's in international waters, saying, "Well, that's now part of the United States." I mean, it should be very concerning. And again, don't forget, the Chinese, like all Asian cultures, like the Muslims, they're not worried about today. They're certainly not worried about tomorrow. And they really aren't really that worried about next week either, or next year either. I mean, they look at things as, hundreds of years down, 1,000 years down the road. That's what their mentality is geared to. Man, let me see if physician nurse shortage. I've talked to you about that before. Just something I wanted to kind of just throw out there. Something to. I'm sure we're going to double back on this. Kind of started with the whole Obamacare thing, but we are starting to get into a critical shortage of doctors and nurses in this country. Ebola. If you remember during the Obama years, at some point, it became a potential worldwide pandemic. We put a lot of resources over in Africa where it was originated, primarily in the Congo. Got it under control. Apparently it is back active around that area. And we know from our Border Patrol people that they have arrested a bunch of people from the Congo and a couple of other countries in Africa around the Congo where this Ebola is breaking out again. I remember very early in discussing the whole issue of this whole immigration thing. One of the things I really tried to hone in on was this health crisis that was going to become a legitimate problem, potentially a real national problem. We've already seen it with the measles and the mumps and some of these other diseases that we haven't seen, these polio-like diseases that we haven't seen in this country for 50 years. And it's primarily coming from the immigration, from the illegal immigration on our border. Cartoon Network is now promoting the LGBTQ agenda, just in case you have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. You got to pay attention to what shows they're watching on the Cartoon Network, because they are pushing, a whole gay-friendly storylines on the Cartoon Channel. I told people years ago, man, no, they'll leave the kids alone. No, they're not, because once they get the kids, it's like now. They've got a whole generation, almost a whole second generation, that have grown up from day one thinking and being told by a culture without any kind of an opposing message that this whole sexual perversion is wonderful, acceptable, beautiful. something to be, proud of. One last thing, I've got a couple things tonight. I want to talk about the Women's World Cup from a couple different angles. I need to talk about should we preach about how, oh man, there's this big debate in the churches. Should we, talking about hell scares people. Man, what a gutless generation of quote unquote pastors we have, man. All right, let's cut it there because I can't even start down any of those roads right now. Because I might be here all night if I do. Listen, before we leave tonight, if you've never made a decision for Christ before, I want to